رب العالمين وبه نستعين ونصلي ونسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وحبيبنا وقدوتنا وقرة أعيننا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. So alhamdulillah, we've completed the muqaddimah and now getting into the actual book. As we mentioned, the author, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon him, starts off his book is regarding ibadat, the rules and guidelines pertaining to worship, the law of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the ibadat, we have five main ibadat, and the most important of them is salah. We have certain ibadat that are important, and from them the most important is salah. And from the conditions of salah is tahara, which is purification. So the author, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him, starts his book off with the chapter regarding purification. He starts off, he says, Kitab al-Tahara. Now, kitab, kataba, linguistically, kataba yaktubu kitaban is in the meaning of al-jama', jama'a, to gather. Kataba yaktubu, and as a masdar you can say katban wa katabatan wa kitbatan wa kitaban. And it's initially in the meaning of jama', to gather. And this is why an army contingent in Arabic is called katibah, lijtima'ihim, because they are gathered. And the reason why a book is called kitab is because it gathers the letters and words of a specific subject matter in one place together. So the gathering of these words and letters and bringing them together is why kitab is actually called kitab. And kitab over here is also intended, or the meaning which is intended from kitab is al-maktub, meaning what has been gathered, i.e. what has been written. And when you write, you are putting together, joining together letters. And by putting these letters together, you are creating words. And by putting words together, you are creating sentences. And by combining sentences and ordering them, you are creating paragraphs. And by putting paragraphs together, you are creating an entire discussion and book. So that's why a book is called al-kitab. And that's the linguistic definition of kitab. Now, as for the termed definition of kitab istilahan, we say kitab refers to ta'ifa min al-masail. For example, in the books of fiqh, when we have kitab al-tahara, what are we referring to? Kitab al-tahara, kitab al-salah, kitab مثلا al-hajj, al-sawm, al-zakah. So we say kitab over here is referring to طائفة من المسائل الفقهية اعتبرت مستقلة شملت أنواعا أو لم تشمل. طائفة من المسائل الفقهية اعتبرت مستقلة شملت أنواعا أو لم تشمل. When we say Kitab al-Tahara, for example, we are referring to a number or a group of masail fiqhiyya, of commandments in fiqh, that are considered unique and by themselves. So for example, the commandments that you will find in Kitab al-Tahara are specific to, or with regards to, purification, tahara. And you're not going to find the same commandments in Kitab al-Salah. The commandments you're going to find in Kitab al-Salah are not specific to tahara, rather they are specific to salah, anything which pertains to the worship or the act of salah and prayer. شملت أنواعا أو لم تشمل. Regardless of whether these masail can be further classified into categories meaning they can sub-branch into categories, or they cannot sub-branch into categories. Regardless, you will call this group of masail, if they're mentioned together, as kitab. An example of where the masail would be able to further branch off into categories is kitab al-tahara. Kitab al-tahara, chapter regarding purification, is a chapter which will have masail, commandments pertaining to purification within it. This chapter then, however, can further divide and be categorized in different categories. So for example, in tahara, we have al-wudu, the commandments that pertain to ablution. And likewise, we have al-ghusl. And likewise, we have, for example, tahara bil-ma, using water for tahara. And you have tahara bit-turab, attaining purification using sand in the setting where, or in the scenario where water is not present. So kitab al-tahara can further be categorized into sub-branches. And so this would be the instance where in one kitab, in one chapter, you have a number of masail that can be further categorized into specific categories. And sometimes you will have a kitab which is not able to further categorize, usually some of the smaller topics that all pertain to a very specific mas'ala, or very specific area from fiqh. Like for example, Kitabul Mafqud or Kitabul Abiq, the runaway slave, the commandments that pertaining to the runaway slave, for example. Now there are a few commandments that pertain to this topic, and so you don't need to further subcategorize them. You don't need to further subcategorize them. So this is the termed or the istilahi definition of al-kitab. Now, other than kitab, we also have two other words which are used in the books, such as bab and fasl. We have kitab, we have bab, and we have fasl. And the way you can picture this is if you think of a large circle, and in that circle there are smaller circles, multiple smaller circles, and in each of those circles there are smaller circles. So it's like a web where you have branches that are branching off from the same, or even you can think of it as a tree, where you have the trunk, and then you have larger, thicker branches that branch off from that, and in each one of these thicker branches they have smaller branches that are branching off. So we have likewise we have three words: al-kitab, al-bab, and al-fasl. Now what's the difference between these three? We say kitab is referring to that heading which will gather masail that are of the same jins, which is a larger category. However, they are different in their naw'. They are different in their naw'. So the best way to understand that would be that you have a larger topic like tahara, and tahara divides into, so the jins is tahara. Everything that will be mentioned under the chapter of tahara will have to do with purification. But purification can be in multiple different areas and avenues. So for example, you can have purification pertaining, or when you speak about purification, you can speak about the water through which purification can be attained. So we have a chapter regarding water, and purification of water, the ability of water to purify. You also have attaining purification through wudu. You have attaining purification through ghusl. When will wudu be necessary? When will ghusl be necessary? So yes, the larger umbrella that gathers all is purification. However, inside you have different topics that all support that larger umbrella and that larger discussion that is being discussed. So we say regarding kitab, al-kitabu huwa al-jami' li masail muttahida fil jins mukhtalifa fil naw'. As for bab, We would say bab, al-bab would be referring to al-jami' لمسائل متحدة في النوع مختلفة في الصنف. Where even the subcategory, they're the same. But they are different in a type of that subcategory. So for example, let's say under kitab you have under kitab al-tahara, we have bab al-wudu and we have bab al-ghusl. And then under wudu, you have a sub branch regarding the sunan of wudu, and you have the wajibat of wudu, and you have the nawaqid of wudu. So these are all fusul, where they're all pertaining to wudu, and wudu is in a larger sense pertaining to purification and tahara. Likewise, for example, kitab al-tahara will have the naw' of bab al-ghusl, and under ghusl you will have the wajibat of ghusl, and you will have the sunan of ghusl, and you have what necessitates ghusl, for example, the method of performing ghusl. So these are sub branches that will branch off from the general idea of ghusl. And ghusl is coming from tahara. And regarding bab, some of them they do laghaz. They say فما شيء حقيقته مجاز وأوله وآخره سواء ثلاثي وفيه حرف مد له الإعراب حقا والبناء. Literally, what does bab mean? The literal meaning of bab, linguistically, is فرجة في ساتر يتوصل بها من داخل إلى خارج وبالعكس. فرجة في ساتر, it's an opening in some sort of a satir, a curtain. It doesn't have to be a curtain, anything which is a barrier between two things. So it could be a wall, it could be a curtain, and there's a gap inside. So a wall would act as a barrier between two places, and there's a gap, there's a furja, there's an opening inside of that barrier. يتوصل بها, through that opening you can reach from inside to outside. يتوصل بها من داخل إلى خارج وبالعكس, and vice versa. So any form of a barrier that is there, through which, or inside, or a part of which there is an opening, and through that opening you're able to go to the outside and come back inside. This is linguistic meaning of bab. So he says, the poet, he says, فَمَا شَيْءٌ حَقِيقَتُهُ مَجَازُ. What is a thing? The haqiqa of it is majaz. Now, haqiqa linguistically means the literal meaning, right? The literal meaning of something. And majaz in language is used for the metaphorical meaning of something. So normally the literal meaning is not the same as the metaphorical meaning, right? So if you have a literal meaning of a word, okay, you're not gonna say that the same exact meaning that the literal word is portraying is the same meaning that, or the metaphorical meaning will also mean the same. The literal meaning is different. The majazi meaning, the metaphorical meaning, is different. So he starts off by asking, what type of a thing is such that its literal is its majaz? فَمَا شَيْءٌ حَقِيقَتُهُ مَجَازٌ وَأَوَّلُهُ وَآخِرُهُ سَوَاءٌ. And the beginning of it and the end of it is the same. Its beginning, its start, and its end is the same. ثُلَاثِيٌّ, it is 3 letters. وَفِيهِ حَرْفُ مَدٍّ, and in it is a harf of mad. لَهُ الْإِعْرَابُ حَقًّا وَالْبِنَاءُ. It has i'rab, meaning it's mu'rab, as well as bina, meaning it's also mabni. So what type of a thing would be such that its literal is majaz, its beginning and ending is the same, it's 3 letters, in it is the harf al-mad, and it is mu'rab and mabni at the same time? So the answer to this is bab. How is bab such that its haqiqi ma'na is the same as majaz? So we say over here, when we say haqiq and majaz, we're not referring to literal meaning versus metaphorical meaning. Rather, majaz is the place of tajawuz. Majaz over here is the place where through which tajawuz can be done, through which you can go from one to the other, through which you can cross over. And haqiqa is not in the meaning of literal meaning. Rather, it's in the meaning of the literal physical component of bab. So he says, the haqiqa, the literal physical component of bab, is that it's a pathway. It's majaz. Yani yujazu fihi. It's majaz. It's a pathway, a way to cross from one side to the other. That's the literal, physical being of a bab. وَأَوَّلُهُ وَآخِرُهُ سَوَاء. Why? Because it starts with a ba and ends with a ba. ثلاثي is 3 letters, and the middle one is a harf al-mad, which is alif. له الإعراب حقا والبناء. It is mu'rab in syntax. In nahu, bab is mu'rab. And it's also mabni. And mabni, the literal meaning of mabni, so in nahu, mabni means that which doesn't experience i'rab. But the literal meaning of mabni is from bina, and bina is a structure and a building. And a bab is constructed, any door or pathway would be constructed into a structure and building. So it is mabniyun fid dar. The bina of a bab is in the house, and it is constructed into a wall or into or in a house. So in this way, it's mu'rab in the sense that in syntax it experiences i'rab, but it's mabni in the sense that it is physically constructed into a house and a door, or a door is physically constructed into a house or a wall. نعم. So they say فما شيء حقيقته مجاز وآخره وأوله سواء ثلاثي وفيه حرف مد له الإعراب حقا والبناء. That is باب. طيب. He says كتاب الطهارة, the chapter regarding purification, the chapter of purification. This is مضاف مضاف إليه. And over here, the إضافة is in the meaning of lam. Now, إضافة can come in 3 meanings, primarily, and then further on it can divide into even more. The first of the meanings of إضافة is that it can come in the meaning of lam. And this lam would be for indicating al-imtilak, ownership, or al-ikhtisas, meaning specification. So for example, if you were to say that there is something which belongs to someone else, like for example, صديق زيد, or for example, غلام زيد, غلام زيد. What you're really saying over there is غلام لزيد. غلام زيد, slave of Zayd or servant of Zayd, is in the meaning of غلام لزيد, a servant who belongs to Zayd, who is owned, he's in the ownership of Zayd. And likewise, for example, if you were to say غلام زيد would be in the meaning of something, or the ghulam who is owned by Zayd. And if you were to say صديق زيد, the friend of Zayd, that's as if you are saying صديق لزيد, yani a friend specific to Zayd. The friend isn't owned by Zayd, but lam over here is for ikhtisas. Yani the friend is, we're specifying the friend for Zayd. And this is the type which is used the most, when idafa comes in the meaning of lam. When idafa comes in the meaning of lam, like غلام زيد, غلام لزيد, that's for imtilak, or غلام, or صديق زيد, which would be صديق لزيد, يعني صديق يختص بزيد or لزيد. طيب. Idafa can also come in the meaning of min. And that's when we would say that the mudaf is more general than the mudaf ilay. And the mudaf ilay can actually be a part, a type of the mudaf. So the mudaf would be a jins, and the mudaf ilay would be the naw', one of the anwa' of that mudaf. So for example, if you were to say dinaru fiddatin, what you're saying over there is dinarum min fiddatin. Or for example, you say khatamu hadidin. Khatam is uh, a ring. And if you, rings can be a multiple different anwa'. It can be metal, it can be silver, it can be gold, golden ring. Okay, so by mentioning the mudaf ilay over here, we're clarifying which naw' it is. Because when you just say ring, it's general. So if you say khatamu hadidin, yani khatamun min hadidin. A ring, specifically, we're talking about the ring which is made of metal. Or khatamu fiddatin, yani khatamun min fiddatin. So over here, idafa is in the meaning of min al-bayaniya. This min is for bayan. Okay, so it clarifies what the naw' is of the, by mentioning it in the mudaf ilay. Clarifies the naw' of the mudaf by mentioning it in the mudaf ilay. So idafa can also come in the meaning of min al-bayaniya. Idafa can also come in the meaning of fi al-dharfiyya. Idafa can also come in the meaning of fi, which is for dharfiyya. And this would indicate upon the place or the time of the mudaf. Okay. Like for example, if you were to say yurihu nawmul layli, night's sleep. Yurihu nawmul layli, the sleep of the night, night's sleep. We say over here, this is in the meaning of fi adharf, yani an-nawmu fil layli. Yurihu an-nawmu fil layli. So the idafa over here is in the meaning of fi al-dharfiyya. Likewise, for example, if you were to say fulanun zamilu dirasati, and he's a friend of studying, any time of studying. What you're trying to say is fulanun zamilun fi zaman al-dirasa. So fi dharfiyya can come for the makan or the zaman of the mudaf. So idafa can come in these three meanings. Either it can be for lam, or can be for min al-bayaniyya, or fi al-dharfiyya. Over here in Kitab al-Tahara, this idafa is in the meaning of al-lam. And there is another mudaf which is in between Kitab and Tahara, which is mahdhuf. So the actual taqdeer, what he says when he says Kitab al-Tahara, is Kitabun li bayani ahkam al-Tahara. Kitabun li bayani ahkam al-Tahara. Bayani ahkam, mudaf, these two mudafs are mahdhuf. They're understood. If you say Kitabun lit-Tahara, okay, then really what we're saying is Kitabun li bayani ahkam al-Tahara. The book or the chapter pertaining to يختص, yani, which is specific for the clarification of the rules that pertain to al-Tahara. So Kitab al-Tahara would be in the meaning of Kitabun li bayani ahkami al-Tahara. And then we say that Kitab al-Tahara over here, Kitab is the khabar of a mubtada which is mahdhuf, meaning هذا كتاب الطهارة. So it would be marfu'. Kitab would be marfu', it would have a dhamma, because it's the khabar of a mubtada which is mahdhuf. هذا كتاب الطهارة. Or you can say that kitab over here is mansub, because it's the maf'ul bihi of a fi'l which is mahdhuf. So for example, اقرأ كتاب الطهارة, or خذ, take كتاب الطهارة. And that's if you gave this a nasab, a fatha. Naam. And if you were to give it a kasra, you can claim that there's a mudaf which is omitted. So, for example, هذا بداية كتاب الطهارة. This is the beginning of the chapter regarding purification. This is the beginning of the chapter regarding purification. طيب, كتاب الطهارة. طهارة is in the meaning of purification. And linguistically, طهر, طهر, يطهر is in the meaning of نظافة, attaining cleanliness, purification. And when you say طهارة, طهارة, you can also say طهر, طهر يطهر. So either you say it's from باب فتحة or you say it's from باب كرمة. طهر يطهر or طهر يطهر. طهر الشيء or طهر الشيء. Al-Ashhar, what's more commonly used is طهر with a dam, even though the fatah upon the ha is afsah. It's better to use a fatha, or it's more fasih. However, al-ashhar, what's more common is that it's with a dam. And in language, it's not necessarily that the ashhar always be afsah. Sometimes the ashhar is actually not the most eloquent or the most fasih manner of that word. And the ashhar is actually not the most fasih. But it's still a lugha, it's still accepted. It's not that it's not a lugha, it's still a lugha. But that can happen in language at times. So you can say طهر الشيء or طهر الشيء, both in the meaning of cleanliness. Now, at-tahara, the ism, tahara, can either be pronounced tahara or tuhara or tihara. Tahara or tuhara or tihara. When we say tahara with a fatha, we're referring to the masdar meaning purification, attaining purification, purifying, to purify. With a fatha, this is in the meaning of the masdar, in the meaning of nidafa. It is the masdar of tahura shay or tahara shay, the meaning of nidafa, to purify, to attain purification. When we say tuhara, it's referring to that which will remain after purification has been achieved. That which will remain after, like the water which will remain, for example, after purification has achieved. Meaning whatever you were purifying using, what remains from that ala, that is referred to by saying tuhara with a dam. We say tihara with a kasra, it's referring to the ala, the tool which is being used. So for example, you can use water, you can use sand. And there are other ways of cleaning things, right? Cleaning is very general. There's so many ways of cleaning depending on what you're cleaning. So when we say tihara, it would be referring to the ala, the tool which is being used. Tihara would be referring to the tool which is being used. طيب, شرعا شرعا يعني اصطلاحا, the meaning of طهارة. So number one, طهارة can either be طهارة حقيقة or حقيقية or طهارة حكمية. Okay. It can be طهارة حقيقية or طهارة حكمية. When we say طهارة حقيقية, we're referring to purification, which is literal purification which is seen. Okay. And the opposite of this purification is najasa, which is impurity. So for example, blood is impure, it's najis. Or for example, a'azzakumullah, urine is impure, it's najis. And likewise, anything which would be considered impure, the saliva, for example, of a dog, which is impure, it's najis. If there is impurity which is upon your clothing or upon your body, then you would have to purify that piece of cloth, or you'd have to purify your body. So this is literal purification. Like you can see the impurity and you're trying to purify it. This is طهارة حقيقية. And then there is طهارة حكمية. طهارة حكمية is بجعل الشارع. يعني the Sharia has made a state of a believer in which at times he is in the state of purity and at times he is in the state of impurity. At times he is in the state of purity and at times he is in the state of impurity. Now, this purity versus impurity is not something that you can physically see. It's a state. It's the state of a believer. And there are methods through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated, or that Allah has legislated, in order for a person to attain this state of purity. And this state of purity is necessary along with literal purity. This state of purity is also necessary and a condition for performing salah. And this is the tahara that we are addressing in this chapter. And how do you attain this state of purity? By making wudu, by making ghusl, if ghusl is wajib upon you. And how can you make wudu? What do you make wudu through? You use water. So this is the discussion, or the few discussions that we're going to be having in this chapter are regarding this tahara, which is tahara hukmiyah. As for tahara haqiqiyah, we'll speak about that regarding, or when we address the idea of nadafa and whatnot. So what is the definition, the istilahi definition of tahara hukmiyah? And نعم, so the istilahi definition of tahara hukmiyah, they say, is أثر يظهر بالمحل الذي تتعلق به الصلاة حكما لاستعمال المطهر. أثر يظهر بالمحل الذي تتعلق به الصلاة حكما لاستعمال المطهر. أثر يظهر بالمحل. It is an effect. It is a state that is ظاهر, that is expressed in the mahal, in the place, or in a place with which salah is connected. Now, why do we say in a place? Why don't we just say the body? Like it's a state of the body. Because when we're referring to tahara, we're not only referring to tahara in the body. Rather, tahara has to be in the clothing that you're wearing, and it has to be in the place that you're performing salah as well. So your body, yes, has to be in the state of tahara, and it has to be pure. But also, the clothing that you're wearing also have to be pure, and the place that you perform salah also has to be pure. So instead of saying بالبدن أثر يظهر بالبدن, we say أثر يظهر بالمحل الذي تتعلق به الصلاة. And mahal is general. So any mahal which is connected with salah. So the body is connected to salah. Likewise, the clothing is connected to salah. Likewise, the place where you perform salah, that is also a mahal that is muta'alliq with salah. So that's where this athar has to be apparent. That's where this athar has to be apparent. And then we say hukman. I mean, this athar is not something that is explicitly seen. And we're saying it's an effect, it's a sign that is in this mahal. طيب, can you see it? The answer is no. So it's understood. It's hukman. لاستعمال المطهر. And it is attained through the usage of al-mutahhir, what Sharia has ordained and legislated to be classified as a mutahhir, something which can purify. And we have two forms of this. Either water, and that's the default. Water is a mutahhir. Water purifies. And next few chapters, we're going to describe which type of water will grant purification. That's the first one. And the second one is sand, turab. Okay. So, which would be tayammum. So, again, why are we not saying listi'mali al-ma? And we chose to say listi'mal al-mutahhir. Why? Because sometimes this tahara, this athar, can be achieved through water, which is a default, and sometimes in the absence of water, or when water is not able to be used due to a sickness, for example, um, uh, in that situation, there is a badal, there is something that can actually replace the water, and that is doing tayammum with a turab. So the istilahi definition of tahara would be أثر يظهر بالمحل الذي تتعلق به الصلاة حكما لاستعمال المطهر. And this is a good definition. أثر يظهر بالمحل الذي تتعلق به الصلاة حكما لاستعمال المطهر. But if we wanted to give a very general definition of tahara, which would be so general that it would include in it both tahara haqiqiyya and tahara hukmiyya, then you can simply say زوال حدث أو خبث or أو خبث. زوال حدث نعم أو خبث or أو خبث. And this is literally 4 words, and it's inclusive. It's a very general definition. Zawalu, the removal of hadath, the state of hadath, and the state of hadath can divide into hadath asghar or hadath akbar. The state of hadath, refers to the state of impurity, and there is a major impurity and a minor impurity. So when a person is in the state of janaba, that is major impurity. And if a person is not in the state of wudu, but he's also not in the state of janaba, then that would be considered minor impurity after azakumullah relieving yourself in the washroom, for example. He would be in the state of minor impurity as long as he's not in the state of janaba. So the removal of this state of impurity, whether it's hadath asghar or hadath akbar. Now, how do you remove the state of impurity? You can remove it through all of the methods that have been ordained by Sharia. So either wudu or ghusl will also work. Sometimes ghusl is necessary. For example, when you're in the state of major impurity, it's necessary to use ghusl. Otherwise, you could do both ghusl or wudu. If you're in the state of minor impurity, they will both work to remove that state of impurity. And if you don't have water, for example, tayammum would replace it. And the major impurity can be because of janaba. It can be because of hayd, the cycle that women experience, or nifas. So when you say zawalu hadath, it's very general. It will include all of this, whether it's removing the major impurity, for whatever reason that major impurity may be, or whether it's removing the minor impurity, and both of them through whichever method, whether it's water or whether it's tayammum. And then you say أو خبث, meaning najasa, removing najasa. Now najasa, we'll learn, can either be najasa ghalidha or can be najasa khafifa. And both of them will have a different method as to how that impurity, that physical impurity, is to be purified and removed. So when you say zawalu khubth or khabath, that's general. Okay. So this definition, zawalu hadathin, or khubth, is very general, and it is a good definition. طيب. The author, he then says, or we have this, the first chapter that we're going to start off, or the first sub-chapter that we will start off with regards to tahara, is المياه التي يجوز التطهير بها. The types of water through which purification is valid. Through which purification is valid. Now, number one, we say al-miyah. Al-miyah, the asl of miyah is actually miwah. So it's not the yeah, rather it's a wow. Just like mizan, the asl of mizan is muzan. Muzan with a wow. Okay. And the wow was turned into a ya. The wow was turned into a ya. And when we say miyah, miyah is jam'u al-kathra of ma. As for the jam'u al-qilla, it's amwah upon the scale of af'al. أفعلة أفعل ثم فعل ثمة وثمة أفعال جموع القلة, as Ibn Malik says. So أفعال is the جمع القلة, which is أمواه, and as for مياه, that's جمع الكثرة. مياه is جمع الكثرة, and مياه is the plural of water, ما, which means water. He says المياه التي يجوز التطهير بها 7 مياه. المياه التي يجوز التطهير بها 7 مياه. The forms of water through which purification is valid are 7. 7 forms of water. Now, يجوز literally means permissible. جاز يجوز. But over here, we're not saying permissible, we're saying valid. So يجوز over here is in the meaning of يصح. Because is it possible that you can attain purity through a method which is impermissible? Like, let's say it's not your water. You used someone else's water, and through it, you made wudu. It's not your water. In that situation, we say your wudu is valid, meaning purification was attained, but it was an impermissible act. So yajuzu over here is actually in the meaning of yasihu, and that's why in the translation we said is valid, not is permissible. Types of water from which attaining purity or through which attaining purity is valid are 7 types. There are 7 types of water through which attaining purity is valid. It's correct, meaning purity will be attained. Now, ijmalan, before we go through these 7, if you want to divide these types of water through which attaining purity is valid, we can actually just divide them into 2 types. Number 1, ما نزل من السماء, the water that comes down from the sky. And number 2, ما نبت من الأرض, the water which comes from the ground. Okay, that will gather for you all of these 7 in 2 types. Either it's coming down from the sky, or either it's coming out of the earth. That's water. And in more detail, we can say that there are 7 types. Number 1 is ma'us sama. Ma'us sama, the water which comes from the sky. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَسَلَكَهُ يَنَابِيعَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ. وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لِيُطَهِّرَكُم بِهِ. And ma'us sama, the water which comes from the sky, the rainwater, this is aslul miyah. This is default form of water. The most real, purest form of water is the water that comes from the sky. However, that water can be of different. It's not always the same. Like, it's not every single time it rains, it's not the same exact type of water that's descending or falling. But the point is, all this water is coming from the sky. And we say water coming from the sky, we mean the clouds. The water that comes from the rainwater, which is coming from the clouds. The second one is ma'ul bahr, ocean water. Ocean water. Now, al-bahr, literally in Arabic, al-bahr is a place or something which has, عمق and اتساع, وسعة. It's vast. It's something which is very, very wide and massive. And it's deep. So this is why the ocean is called bahr, is because bahr literally means something which is very deep and vast. So therefore, every body of water which is very, very, vast, which will be called ma'ul bahr, deep and vast, that will be called ocean water. Whether it's fresh water or whether it's salt water. Okay. All of it will be called bahr. And the point, when will we call it bahr, as opposed to, for example, what's going to come, which is nahar? Okay. We will call it bahr when it's extremely vast. And normally, ocean water is not fresh water. It's salt water. Normally, ocean water in the vast oceans is not fresh water, and it's salt water. And this is why someone might think, you know what, is it permissible to make wudu using this water? Okay, which is actually, it's not fresh water. You can't drink it. But can you make wudu with it? So that's why some Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum actually asked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam this question. As Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates, he says, جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله إنا نركب البحر ونحمل معنا القليل من الماء فإن توضأنا به عطشنا أفنتوضأ من ماء البحر. He said, Ya Rasulullah, we traverse, the sea, as in we travel. ونحمل معنا القليل من الماء. And we're not able to take a lot of water, drinkable water with us, fresh water with us. We have a little bit of water. If we use this water for wudu, then we would, run out of water. فإن توضأنا به عطشنا. أفنتوضأ من ماء البحر. Can we make wudu with the water of the ocean, with ocean water? So this Sahabi is asking the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam again, because someone might think that, oh, this water is mainly salt water, and the way he is describing, he's saying that we're going to make wudu with the water that we carry with us. We can't, we drink. If we make wudu with the water we carry from us, then we will be thirsty and we'll run out of water. Meaning we won't be able to drink from the ocean water. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying, هو الطهور ماؤه وهو الطهور ماؤه الحل ميتته. Its water is pure. Its water is pure. الحل ميتته, and that's a different topic. So in the hadith, the Messenger clarified that the ocean water is completely pure and you're able to make wudu using that water. So the second type is ma'ul bahr. Then we have ma'ul nahr. And really, you can say an-nahr and you can say an-nahr with a fatha on the ha or a sukun on the ha. It's majra al-ma. It is where water flows. Water flows, not meaning it's not a body of water which is still, rather it is where water is flowing. So you can call it a river, the water of a river. And this water as well is permissible to make wudu using this water, and it's valid. And there are multiple anhar. Some of the most famous anhar, for example, is Furat, Euphrates, the Nahr of Kufa. Likewise, the Nile in Misr, it's also a Nahr. Likewise, you have Sayhun and Jayhun in the lands of Ma Wara al-Nahr. Then we have Ma'ul Bi'r, which is water that is from wells. Water which is from wells. And you can say Bi'r or you can say Bir. Ma'ul Bi'r or Ma'ul Bir. Ma'ul Bir. So the Hamza can be pronounced, or the Hamza can be dropped and turned into a ya. طيب. 5 and 6 is ما ذاب من الثلج والبرد. Meaning that water which melts from snow and hail. Okay. Yani when we say ذاب, it means that it's able to تقاطر. It's dripping. What would determine melting? When it's able to, or when it drips. And of course this would be permissible because in reality, hail and snow, okay, it's water from the sky. But because of the excessive coldness, it freezes. Okay. And when it receives heat, then it turns back to dripping water. So this is really just ma'us sama. The 7th type is ma'ul ayn. Ma'ul ayn, which is spring water. Spring water, if there's water in a spring, then this would be the 7th category. And all of these, as I said, will divide into 2. ما نزل من السماء ما نبت من الأرض. Anything which falls down from the sky, the water that falls down from the clouds, or the water that comes out from the earth. This is aslul ma. This is there's no doubt that this water is pure. These forms of water are pure, and you're able to make wudu with all of these forms of water. Now, as a side point, we mentioned over here that the idafa. So, for example, when we do idafa, we're saying ma'ul sama, ma'ul bahr, ma'ul nahr, ma'ul bi'r, right? Ma'ul ayn. This idafa is for the purpose of ta'rif and not taqyid. For the purpose of ta'rif and not taqyid. And what do I mean by that? For example, if you were to say the Muslims of uh, you know, the Arab lands, like for example, the Muslims of Egypt, or you said the Muslims of America, the Muslims of Pakistan, the Muslims of Saudi, they're all Muslim. And you can refer to each one of them just saying Muslim too. You don't have to say Muslim of Saudi, Muslim of Misr, Muslim of. But the purpose, or when would you say that Muslims of Egypt, is when you simply want to clarify, you know what, these Muslims are coming from Egypt. تعرف عنهم, يعني you want to just mention that, okay, these ones are coming from there. But in being Muslim, they're all what? They're all the same. They're all equal. It's not like one is, more of a Muslim than the other. No, they're all equal Muslims, equally Muslims. Okay, whether they're from America, whether they're from India, whether they're from Pakistan, whether they're from Arab lands like Egypt or Saudi, they're all equally Muslim. So the purpose of this idafa is for ta'rif. It's just to show that, okay, you know what, this is one is from there. That's it. And you can refer to each one of them as Muslim without this idafa. So likewise, all of these forms of water, the only reason we're making them mudaf is just to show where it's coming from. That's it. Otherwise, it's all equally water. It's all equally water. The purpose of this idafa is just ta'rif. It's not taqyeed. It's not to say that, for example, ma'us sama is, in terms of being water, it's more or it's different from ma'ul bahr. Or ma'ul bahr, in terms of being water, it's different from ma'ul bi'r. No, all of them are water. You say water regarding all of them. Okay, it's just a matter of where the water is coming from. So is it coming from the sky directly? Is it from the ocean? Is it from the, rivers? Is it from the wells? Okay, where is it coming from? That's it. So the purpose of this idafa in all 7 of these is ta'rif and not taqyeed. We're not trying to say that ma'un nahr is different when it comes to being water if you were to compare it with ma'ul sama, or if you were to compare it with ma'ul ayn. Okay. Thereafter, the author, he mentions the types of water in terms of, so now we've mentioned where the water will come from, default water. But what are the types of water when it comes to attaining purification or not attaining purification? Meaning this water that we just mentioned, okay, we mentioned the default water through which you can attain purification. But in terms of it being able to purify or not, are there types? The answer is yes. He will mention these aqsam, and inshallah we'll continue from here in the next lesson. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.